every internship slash contract slash job I have ever done ranked from S tier to F, if that's even on the scale. I'm not going to be giving anything an F. I haven't had any terrible work experiences. But this is my working life. This is my professional life, in a way, represented here today. So let's start off with VBS. So VBS is what we affectionately call Vacation Bible School. It's basically a place where people who are Christian will send their children to sing and perform basic sport-like activities, as well as learn about the Bible. And it was okay. I'm obviously not very religious now. I'm no longer keeping the faith. But I think this was an okay time for me to spend my childhood. I was originally a student, and then I became a worker there and helped do, sports or collegiate activities, if only because I was a terrible singer. And I wish I got better at singing. That's actually one of the things. I really wish I joined chorus in high school. I think that's really where that desire is coming from. But VBS, yeah. I wouldn't want to do it again. I don't think it would be a good fit for me now. I love not-for-profit stuff. I think I could see myself doing that more, but probably not in the religious realm. It's, I don't know. The more you learn about the Catholic Church, the more you're like, ugh. But that's just me. All right, the next internship I did was SS&C. So SS&C was my first, I guess, programming job, which I had in the middle of middle school. So I was, I don't know, maybe 14 years old, 15 years old. And the way that I got this job, it was an internship. It was an unpaid internship. And whenever I talk about unpaid internships, on Reddit, people always make fun of me. They always say, like, unpaid internships are exploitation, etc. And that's not true, right? Legally, the one case where it's okay to do an unpaid internship, where you're not receiving any money, is when the company is not receiving any value from your work. And that was certainly the case here, right? The internship was solely for education. Basically, I got one of the other Boy Scouts in my Boy Scout troop, who was also interested in programming, to come with me, and we asked one of the Scoutmasters, one of the adult leaders basically, if we could do an internship with his company, because he was the only professional programmer that we knew. This is the only professional programmer I had ever met, actually, in real life. And he agreed to it, and he did, not very interesting software. It's basically dealing with whether or not a company can get a loan and mortgages and stuff like that. It's, it's fintech, but not the cool fintech. And so, but this internship, was basically, he would give us these very sandbox problems, and we'd have to solve it. And the process, basically, we were just learning Java for the first time. And it was an amazing experience, I would say. So it's definitely going to be probably A tier or B tier. If only because, I'm so grateful, because it was really just a charity, right? The fact that this guy gave us the time of day to let us do that, he was not benefiting at all from our work, right? And I'm really happy that he did that, and it's one of the things that I think has inspired me to try and give back, because this guy took time out of his day to help two dumbass kids learn how to type computer code, and I'm so grateful of that. And a lot of these internships, I think, are maybe the company didn't derive as much value from my work. And I think that to some degree, that's what an internship is. It's for a company to give a little bit to the community and help, train the next generation of talent. But overall, I would say that, I don't know. It was okay. And I'm really grateful that he gave us the opportunity to do that. I certainly learned a lot. And I guess I came out of it loving code a little bit more. So the next job I did was the 2 terms on NASA. So for NASA, what did I do? I was a intern studying, the first year I studied ocean water temperatures, and then the next year I studied coronal mass ejections. Or maybe I got that mixed up. So this is me. This is when I was bald. This is me and my coworker Akila. Is that here? This is my little bald head. Oh, you can't see it. It's not shown on the thing. Hold on, I'll zoom in so you can appreciate my bald head. There you go. That's me standing next to my research. So that was that internship, and it was pretty fun. I sat next to this guy who got really mad when I would play my music loud, And now, of course, you can't play music at all. It's all headphones. But it was okay. It was very basic, data entry. I remember what was really cool was my class, like my actual class from high school, was taking a field trip to NASA, one of the museums or something like that. And as part of that trip, they met with the team that I worked with. And so in a weird twist of events, I actually got to do my presentation to my actual class of high school students, which was awesome. It was like I felt so special that I could present my work to them. So that was a lot of fun. And I also got to go to California and present my research at the American Geophysical Union. So all in all, it was an awesome experience. It was a good time, and I'm very happy for my PI, Paul Marchese, for giving me the opportunity to do that. So I think that is going to be probably solidly B tier as well. Pretty good experience. Okay, next was Zynga. And Zynga, it's funny because if you ask me when I'm playing games, like if you asked me before I had started working in the games industry, I would have never thought that I would have had as much fun as I did at Zynga. Because Zynga is known for making games that are a little bit, spicy, right? For making games that are a little bit like Cow Clicker, right? There was this famous game called Cow Clicker that kind of made fun of them. And it was, Farmville, where people were kind of getting fed up with the Facebook video games. And now Facebook games are not as popular as they once were, certainly. But this was my first internship in the video game industry. And I have to say, I was so inspired to be around so many people who are just as passionate about video games as I was. Not just Farmville, they were passionate about Halo and Call of Duty and all those other games I was playing at the time, RuneScape, all that stuff. And I had the privilege of working on a team that was probably not a great experience for full-time people, but it was a really great experience as an internship. And that's sort of this interesting thing where some teams are great to intern at because they're kind of crazy and wild and you can get a good experience. But as a full-time person, you're going to be riding those waves and it's going to be scary and job security is going to be kind of freaky. But as an intern, it was awesome. So I probably wouldn't want to live there or go there full-time. But honestly, thinking back to that summer, what an awesome intern class as well. All of those folks are doing just such incredible things. They're all so smart. That was definitely an S-tier internship for me, which is sort of an interesting thing because I sort of started out thinking that the video games that are my favorite to play are also going to be my favorite to make. And I've realized over time that is not the case at all. Mostly because my favorite games to play are these really small, bespoke, personal indie games made by like one or two people. Stuff like The Beginner's Guide or even Gone Home, which is like a team of like 4 or 5. However, when I'm working on a team, I love to work with other people. And I love to be on a team with, 30, 50, 100 people. And I think that was sort of the first reason why I was like, oh, okay, there's a pretty of a paradigm shift between the kind of teams I like to work on versus those kind of games I like to make. But even beyond that, just in terms of genre, I realized that it's a lot of fun to work on multiplayer games, to work on games that have a lot more systems than sort of the maybe smaller experiences that I usually consider my favorite. Maybe just because I like to play games that are really focused, but when I work on a team, I like to be part of a bigger picture. So Zynga, yeah, what an awesome internship. I had an amazing time there. Then let's talk about BVP. So this was actually a little self-employment where I was working with the venerable Scott Mulligan on, what was it? It was No Stranger. It was our first indie game together. And man, that was incredible. I definitely would say that was S tier as well. It was so much fun to be working with my buddy. And actually, coincidentally, I was working at Black Vein around the same time I was doing Zynga stuff. And that was a really awesome experience to be doing Zynga and then at the same time doing indie work. It was sort of a fun balance. And it was a really fun groove to get into, I would say. Where, I had the AAA side and I had the indie side at the same time. So it was two different sides of the games industry. But yeah, the best part about doing indie games too, well, here's the catch though. making indie games is very different than making indie games on a budget, you know? And so I would say my work for Black Vein has been pretty hobbyist. I haven't ever had to worry about paying the rent on my Black Vein stuff. And I think that is a major reason why it can be such a high tier, is because I don't have to worry about it or be as critical of that for that reason. Yeah. So the next internship was for the FIP. So this is the International Pharmaceutical Federation. This is my work for Glyph stuff. So this is the new website we just launched on pharmacotherapy research. So basically trying to translate medication instructions using these pictures. And that's a project I'm still working on today. It's one that's very near and dear to my heart. I think it matters a lot that we help these people. And for the most part, it's been not-for-profit work. But for a short period of time, I did a contract for them as well, where I was hired. And that was an awesome experience. Just in general, I would say working with that team has been a dream come true. And it's fulfilled my work, my life, in a way that I don't think video games ever will. Because it's tangibly, making a difference in people's lives. Not at like an entertainment level, but at like, holy shit, like we're saving lives here. And I feel so passionately about that mission, and I'm so grateful to be able to contribute to that team. It is, but it hits in a sort of different way. So this is also definitely, I think, S tier. Oh man, everything's gonna be S tier. I'm not a very harsh critic. What else? Okay, so next is Iron Tiger. So Iron Tiger was not the best internship. So I would say probably this would be maybe C tier or D tier. At Iron Tiger, I was basically just fixing, really low-level bugs, and again, just, not very exciting stuff. It was in Unity, which was nice because I had some experience in that, but it was built in a game engine with on top of a lot of frameworks that were just sort of like every time you wanted to do. I think we've all worked in code bases like this, where every time you want to do something, it's difficult. And you're hitting friction. And this code base was definitely like that. It was painful. It was painful to work in this code base. It was not fun. And so I wouldn't say that was the best experience. But again, it was a situation where, I was there because they were willing to take a chance on me. And they were willing to invest in me for the long term. As sort of, a good faith to the industry itself. And I'm really grateful that they gave me that opportunity nonetheless. So I can't put them in C tier. I'm going to put them in B tier. Unfortunately, that code base did prove too hard to manage. The creative direction never quite found its way. And the studio soon closed its doors. And everybody got laid off. So it's a bit of a sad ending to a sad story. But that is how it goes in the games industry. I distinctly remember... And this, this is always something that I think about when I'm judging a studio, when I'm thinking about if I want to work there, is just, hey, how hard is it to talk to the boss? You know what I mean? How hard is it to just say hi to the boss and tell them how you feel about something? And I remember distinctly, I sent an email to the vice president or whoever was the boss of the office we were at. And I said, hey, I'm an intern working on this team. And I'm really excited about being here. And I would love to have lunch with you if you're free one day. And I never got a response from that person. Instead, I got a response from my boss that said, hey, my boss's boss's boss was told by the VP. She told my boss to tell my boss's boss's boss to tell my boss's boss to tell my boss's boss to tell me to tell you that you have no right to ask for dinner, or to ask for lunch, to hang out with this person. And man, that really hurt my feelings. I really don't like industries where, companies where you're not allowed to, talk to the boss or just to vocalize your thoughts. That stuff's really irked me. So, in general, whenever I find a team that's a little phobic to feedback, I get the heebie-jeebies. So that was Iron Tiger. So now let's talk about Facebook VR. Oh, that's not this one. That's this one, Facebook Horizon. So this is another canceled project, unfortunately. However, an awesome code base to work with. A total different situation here. It was an awesome time to be hanging out in this code base, an absolute breeze. everybody was really passionate about the project. I remember one guy in particular, Chris Horn, I work with. Wow, that guy inspired me so much just to be sitting next to this guy and working with him. And I think he had joined this team right after, I think, winning an Academy Award for his short film in VR, which is awesome. Such a talented guy. Got to work with Ocean Quigley here, an amazing creative director, as well as a bunch of other people, a bunch of really, really cool people. Kent Jolly, the, I guess, music man behind Facebook Horizon, also really talented individual. And I mean, it's important to note because Facebook has so many resources, right? And it's a whole different ballgame to be working in a company like Facebook because, you know, they could hire Joe Rumsey, who created BattleNet, right? This is one of the best network engineers probably in the world. And they literally paid to fly this guy, I think, every weekday to work and then fly him back like every single day. It was insane. I remember waiting outside for the bus with him one day, and he was like, yeah, man, I'm heading to the airport. I'm going back to my family, which is just it's just wild, the amount of money Facebook has to the degree that they can hire the best of the best in every single category. And you really felt it when you were on that team. So much incredible talent. It was an honor and nothing short of it to work on this amazing team. Really, really cool folks. And I think for that reason, it would probably be A tier. I would say it would be A tier for most people. It's so tough, right? Because do you judge it for yourself? Do you judge it for most people? Do you judge it as an internship? Do you judge it as a full-time job? I think the only thing to watch out about with Facebook is it's definitely a Kool-Aid culture. You know, it's very much. I remember they would have these meetings every. Also, a really great company when it comes to speaking to management. Like if you want to, do a question at the all hands or, ask Mark a question, very much a company that is like feedback-philic, right? They're soaking in feedback. They're constantly asking you how they can be better. That's a company that if you said, hey, I have an idea, people will listen to you. And I really respect that. So that's another positive. I mean, there's a lot of positives with Facebook. Obviously, everybody wants to work there. It's an amazing company. The only concern is just like you got to watch out with the Kool-Aid a little bit because it is a situation where I remember, we'd have these all hands meetings every Friday, and they would bring you in and they would say, here is a Facebook group where people got together after this crazy hurricane, and got together and like saved people's lives, and it was very much like, oh my gosh, we're so awesome, where it was like, okay, yeah, but did we really like do that, or did we just kind of facilitate the group that they used to do that? And I think there was a little bit of a disconnect there, where it was like, Facebook's awesome, yeah, we saved these lives, and it's like, oh, well, did we though? I mean, we did empower them, but we didn't actually do anything with respect to the thing. So that, and if you voice that opinion, you will be slaughtered. So that is the only, that's the only thing to worry about when you're working at that company. But for the most part, if you're drinking the Kool-Aid, you're having a great time. Hangar 13. Do I not have a picture for that? I thought I did. Humbug. I thought I just downloaded a picture for Hangar 13. I don't have a picture for Hangar 13. Damn it. All right. Well, I didn't come prepared. Hangar 13. Well, I'll just do that one right now. We will, this, A will represent Hangar 13. Okay, perfect. We got a little circle there. Okay, so Hangar 13. All right, I have the t-shirt for it right now. This was on the Mafia 3 team. Another code base that was not the funnest to work with. It does make a difference, right? I mean, it's hard to describe to somebody who hasn't done this, but it's sort of like, well, it's sort of like, imagine your job is, imagine your job is to, pedal a boat, to row the oars, and the viscosity of the water, it changes depending on what kind of job you're working at. So sometimes you're at a company where you're paddling, and it feels like syrup. It's like, hey man, I'm trying to get my shit done, and it's so hard to paddle. That's sort of what it feels like when you're working in a code base that is a little bit rough around the edges. And it often is, it has nothing to do with how long the code base has existed or what stage the project it is in. It's almost completely dependent on the team, in my experience. Because this was a pretty old code base, but certainly not as old as Fortnite, which was a pleasure to work in. But probably because it's commercial, because it's the Unreal Engine. All right, well, I'll just stop talking. So anyways, Hangar 13, it was a little rough. It was a little rough to work there. However, this was the first job I worked at where I thought at the end of the day, oh my gosh, I want to come back. This was the first internship where I wanted to come back after doing the internship because I had such an amazing experience working with the people around me. And, that is something you hear often where it's like people are going to jobs not necessarily for the work, but for the people around them, whether it's the manager or the coworkers, what have you. And this was a team where I felt like there was a real camaraderie with the other teammates. And I had an absolute blast working with those folks. I felt like I really cared about them and they really cared about me. And I really wanted to, I just really wanted to see that project succeed. And right now, I don't know where that project is. I haven't heard about it, but it was also like, a 5-year project in year 1. So who knows how it's doing? I'm sure, Take-Two is squeezing everybody right now, but it was an awesome experience. So I would say that was also solidly A tier experience for sure. Okay, so what's next? So next I have Stanford Instructor. So for 2 years, I was paid to teach actually the first year I wasn't paid. I did it free while Stanford collected several $1,000s. But for the second year, I got paid, which was nice. I got paid like a few $100s on there, several thousand. But it's okay. It was a good time and it was an amazing learning experience where I got a lot out of teaching. And I have to say, guys, this was a formative experience in my life. This was definitely an S tier experience because at Stanford, I taught this course called CS 146, which I completely designed the curriculum. Ooh, that's not it. It's over here. And, I did grading until I didn't like grading, and then I had all my TAs grade instead. But I made all these assignments, which are up right now, and a bunch of people who are following the YouTube channel have actually done these assignments on their own to sort of, teach themselves how to do this stuff. So, sorry if you can't see the website, but this is just Google Stanford CS 146. And, man, I fell in love. I fell in love with teaching. It was so amazing to share my passion of creating video games with everybody in the class and to see students start out knowing, in some cases, nothing at all about how to program games and create games that would compete in a professional level on the App Store, on the Play Store, in Steam. It was amazing to see that growth. And I think one part of it is because I really put my whole heart into making this course. I really went a little bit crazy, a little bit dangerously crazy in investing time into this course. But the other half is that it was at Stanford, right? And so there's this funny thing that happens at Stanford, which is that if you're an amazing teacher, the students do great. And if you're a really shitty, horrible teacher, the students do great. Because it's Stanford and everybody's a fucking rock star. So you really can't fail. And so that's one thing to consider, which is that, it's very different to take students who suck, who are terrible at math. And, Jaime Escalante, if you know that guy, an amazing educator, he took a class of like inner city, very poorly educated students in a very low income neighborhood and racked them to like the top score on like their ACTs or SATs, whatever it was. Whereas I'm working with people who are already brilliant. So almost no matter what I put in front of them, they're going to create something amazing. And so I can't take that for granted at the same time. I don't want to pat myself on the back when at the end of the day, I'm working with coworkers, in a sense, who are amazing, just incredible. Some of their work. Like, for example, one of the students who I had in my class is now a lead engineer. And he's leading a team on Pokemon Go. So it's amazing to see that. But what an amazing time. And I deeply want to teach in some capacity in my future, whether it's doing more YouTube stuff like this or volunteering at a local university. There's so many ways to do that, but wow, what an amazing experience. I would highly recommend teaching if you've never tried it. It is so rewarding to help somebody on their journey. It really is. So that is Stanford. So now let's talk about Sony Santa Monica. So I think I also forgot these guys. So I'm going to create a little red for them. And Sony Santa Monica. Ooh, how do I describe that? So this is on God of War Ragnarok, which was recently announced, which is something I'm really excited to say. And I actually did a really in-depth review of their internship in my YouTube video called Intern of War. So you could check it out there for like the 30-minute breakdown of what it was like to live there and what it was like to work there. Overall, really fun environment. What definitely gets into a situation. So, we talked about at Facebook how it's like, hey, everybody wants your feedback. It's definitely an environment where, I think very receptive to you, meeting with people and stuff like that. NCSoft, opposite end of the spectrum. God of War was definitely on that side of the spectrum. It was definitely an office where it was like, hey, you can have this meeting, but if it's pre-approved, right? This is one experience that really stuck with me, which was that I asked one of the writers, hey, can I have lunch with you? And he said, hell yeah, let's have lunch. And then the assistant producer for him, pulled me over and he said, hey man, that's really not cool. You're not allowed to ask people to hang out. And I was like, oh, but it was during his lunch period, and it was a similar situation where the culture was just, very, very restrictive, very much like, hey, these are people you could talk to, these are people you don't, and stay in your fucking lane, man. So that was a little bit of a bummer, I think. I remember we had an amazing designer come in from Guerrilla, right? The makers of Apex Legends. And this guy, so talented. He was a designer, but he could also program. And he sat down at his desk and he was like, hey, man, I want to work on the code because this thing is bothering me, but I'm a great programmer too. I could just jump in and fix it. And it was like a whole hassle to get this guy approval because they were just refusing to do it because they wanted, programmers to be in this lane, engineers to be in this lane, and this idea of like somebody cutting across boundaries, somebody trying to have lunch with somebody who was not in their pod. It was very like a little tribalized in that sense, and I think that was a real bummer because it was one of the probably the most talented team I've ever worked with. The most talented team I've ever worked with, I would say that. Well, I honestly, that's hard to say with Facebook Horizons because they could buy anything they wanted, right? So I don't know if that's true. It was maybe second most talented team I've ever worked with. Certainly when it comes to like the design side, because Facebook didn't have like a lot of designers, I think. Not like video game engineer designers. It was more like UI designers, which is a different kind of designer. Yeah, the most talented designers I've ever worked with. Because, man, I mean, there's another thing that you fall into, which is when you're working at AAA, you'll notice that certain studios treat different disciplines a little bit differently. It's very common that we hear about the three heads butting argument, the three butting heads having an argument, which is the art department versus the engineering department versus the design department, right? And it's very often that these guys will get into a clash and it will be messy, right? I mean, it's no secret that in the middle of God of War, the art director, got the hell out of there, right? Because he was having issues with the design director. And that was covered in the documentary about that. And then what happened right after that launch? Half the engine team left to go to Apple because they also were pissed off with design. So I think it's definitely a situation where it's like, if you're going to be working at God of War, design is king, and if you're not design, you're not king, and you need to understand that. Compared to a company like Epic Games, where engineering is king. And if you're not engineering, you're not king, and you need to understand that. I think I've worked at some studios where it's actually at parity, where there's a lot of different contributors. Everybody sort of has a voice. Certainly Hangar 13 was much more like that, where it was not like one department, I think, was, ruling them all. But when you go to these first-party studios, Naughty Dog, Sony Santa Monica kind of thing. It is definitely leaning more on that design side, right? So I think it's another thing to consider. So I would say this was probably B or C tier. A great internship and certainly a pretty awesome experience. So I would definitely recommend you check out the Santa Monica team, but with the caveats. So that was that one. Next one, Manticore Games. Manticore Games, yeah. So this was not a game company, right? Oh, can I bring to front? Is that an option here? No, it's not. Oh, here we go. Bring forward. Okay, here we go. Manticore Games. So this was a startup. The only startup, I think, other than my own, that I've worked at. And that was a lot of fun. It was a little different. Working at Manticore Games, I also was in a different... Oh, shit, I forgot an internship. Man, I've done so many internships, I forgot. I did another one here at Tilting Point, which was right about here. Oh, I should have... let me do that one first. I've done a lot of internships because I started in middle school and I did one every single year after that. And then in college, I started doing 2 every year. So let's do Tilting Point. Let's do Tilting Point before we forget. So Tilting Point was the first internship where I was not a programmer. I was a designer. And it would be the last internship where I was a designer. But wow, what an experience. I got to work with an amazing publishing team, which when I started there, nobody had heard of them. And nowadays, they're killing the indie scene. They're one of the most mentioned names for that kind of game, this sort of a hyper-casual mobile. And they are an incredible team. So really smart people. And it was such an amazing experience for me because I really had a unique opportunity, which was that now when I'm going into a programming job, I've done a lot of programming. And so I sort of have expectations, background, comparisons when it comes to the job. But working at Tilting Point was a whole different story because working at Tilting Point, I had never been a designer before. And so I learned about dual currency economies for the first time. I learned about, balancing and long-term player progression for the first time. It was interesting because when I think about a great gameplay engineer, I think about somebody who's a really good programmer, but also a really good designer. And so that was an opportunity for me to put the programming on pause and really focus on working out my design muscles. And for that reason, I would say it was definitely probably a B tier or A tier experience. I'll put it in B. It was okay. I was very underpaid. The pay was really rough. I was eating peanut butter and jelly sandwiches every day because that's all I could afford. I couldn't go out for lunch. I was literally on minimum wage. I think I countered the offer and it was like, all right, we'll raise you 5 cents or something like that. That's the other thing too. Every company views internships a little bit differently. Some companies, an internship is basically a junior programmer who is on trial, and you're paid the same as a junior, practically. You're given the same work as a junior, and if they hire you, your job doesn't change much. Suddenly your title's different. There are other companies where the internship is sort of like the grunt labor. The interns kind of do a lot of the work to fill in the gaps, right? And so you might have a lot of interns. So in this team, I think for my particular pod, there was 3 interns and 1 full-time person, right? So the interns were outnumbered, or we outnumbered them on a scale of 3 to 1. And that's usually a little bit of a red sign, I would say, or a warning sign, right? A red flag is what they call it. Because we were there a little bit as grunt labor, and that's not to say I didn't get a lot out of it and learn a lot, but I think you should be a little bit cautious when you see something like that occur. And, when it comes to Manticore Games, it was the same deal. Manticore Games took on, holy shit, maybe 8 or 10 interns? It was a little bit much. It was basically a glorified QA position. As one of the other interns said to me one day, they were like, she said to me, we're basically glorified QA. Though we certainly weren't being paid like QA. We were being paid really well. This is the opposite side of the spectrum, where the first internship I was pretty underpaid. This internship I was pretty overpaid relative to what the kind of work I was doing. And I told my manager, I said, hey man, I'm overpaid. If you do this internship again, you shouldn't pay as much. And everybody hates me for that, but I really want the best for that company. Man, what an awesome team. Really, they're doing something incredible, something really, really cool, which is, if you can imagine Fortnite Creative, they want Fortnite Creative to, be accessible for everyone. And you don't need to know how to be a pro coder, or you don't need to do it in Fortnite to do that. So it's basically the same thing as Dreams, if you played that game, but with the added idea that, hey, you can monetize your games, and they're already starting to pay people for that. So that's a really cool thing. Yeah, so I basically did developer relations. This was one of those situations, though, where, again, I was doing a different kind of job than I'm used to. And so in a positive way, it was an opportunity for me to flex a new skill set. But in a negative way, it was also similar to God of War, or what was the other company? Or Iron Tiger, where it was like, hey man, stay in your lane. It was the same exact thing as God of War, in the sense that I asked, hey, can I clone the engineering repo? I'm a engineer with a little bit of AAA experience. I'd love to help work on this. I remember specifically I needed to do something with the UI, and the UI was broken, and I knew how to fix it. And I was like, hey man, let me clone the repo so I could just go in here and code it. And they said no, they wouldn't let me do it. I wasn't allowed to work on the code base because I wasn't tasked as an engineer, which is the same thing that they did on the God of War team. And I hated that. I mean, there's nothing more painful than taking somebody who wants to do work and wants to improve the product and saying to them, hey, no, you're not allowed to do this. You can't do it on your own time. You can't do it on paid time. You are not allowed to help. It sucks, man. It really sucks, because you look at the problems and you think, oh, shit, if only I could do something, It's so demoralizing. I can't think of something worse than that, because you could fix it. I think that's one of the hardest things. It's different to be on a team where you're like facing a tough problem and you don't know how to solve it, or it's beyond your capabilities, or it's just taking much longer than you expected. It's a whole different story where the only thing blocking you is red tape. And that was a situation I ran into here, where I remember distinctly there was a situation where we changed the script, okay? So previously there was a method that you would have to type and call, something like a void start, right? A start method, capital START. However, they updated the script so that now it was lowercase start. And everywhere, in every demo game where the script was used, it broke because it wasn't the correct casing, and they had changed it for consistency. So everybody's game was suddenly broken, all these prototypes we had made. And I distinctly remember people on the team, this one guy, our producer, James, the best producer I've ever worked with, by the way, an incredible guy, and a talent that really stood out on this team. This guy, he was going in to every single text file, control finding every lowercase start, and he didn't have the control find case sensitive, so he was literally going every time this thing came up, and he was manually fixing it, right? And it wasn't just start, right? It was all these methods had to be instantly fixed. And I was like, holy shit, dude, this is lunacy. Like, I showed them this function called wingrep, which can recursively go through directories, search through files, and if it sees a lowercase start, it can replace it with an uppercase start, using regular expressions and stuff like that. And I saved the team so much work on these updating the scripts. And it's like, holy shit, like, why can't I do more like this? Like, I just want to, like, you see all these problems. And when the more engineering experience you have, the more you look at this stuff and you're like, this is crazy. Why are you doing this by hand? And, there's nothing like, man, I don't know what the so it's like, if you go back to the rowing algorithm, it's like, hey, you're rowing, the rowing analogy, where it's like you're rowing and you're rowing through the syrup and you feel slow. And suddenly you've spent all this time to get big muscles so you could row really fast. But you're chained, and they will only let you row so slow. And that's kind of what it felt like. So it was, it was really frustrating. So I would say this was probably a C or a D tier experience. Definitely recommend it as maybe full-time. But as an internship, it was a little bit rough for that reason. Okay, now let's jump to Fortnite. Am I up to Fortnite? Manticore Fortnite. Yeah, okay, here we go. Fortnite. So this was my most recent internship, and oh my gosh, it was awesome. Such a cool experience. So working at Fortnite. So, I mean, the coolest thing about Fortnite was that everybody plays Fortnite. And everybody and their brother and everybody and their younger sister plays Fortnite. It was insane how big this community was, and I love that. It matters to me so much, the ability to engage with the community and to see them appreciate the game and engage with the game. I've interviewed with a few studios that have a really bad reputation for how they treat their player base, and I've turned down some offers from the studios because it really hurts me to see that, and I don't think I would enjoy working at a studio like that if that's how they're going to treat their players. But Fortnite actually has like a lot of respect, and people really love Fortnite. And people have their entire careers and lives dedicated to Fortnite, which I think is insane. That mattered a lot to me. And that's not even getting into the team itself, which was an amazing team. A team that really cared about me, that wanted to see me grow, that helped me out when I got stuck, that taught me when I did things the wrong way. And, if there was a challenge I wanted to take on that was too great, they said, fuck it, man, go for it. Don't burn yourself out. But I definitely felt like at Fortnite, if I wanted to ask Tim Sweeney a question, I could Slack him. His cell phone number was in his Slack profile. You know what I'm talking about? I felt like if there was a project I wanted to contribute to, I could. It was all, and that's the cool thing with a commercial engine, where it was like I would have an issue with the engine and I would tag somebody on Slack. He'd be like, oh yeah, that's something we're working on, and I could work on some engine code, and I can contribute that and help developers around the world because I had fixed something like that, right? And wow, all that the company Epic stands for really resonates with me too, because they've done so much for indie devs in recent years with the Epic Game Store and other stuff like that. So wow, what an amazing internship. I would say definitely S tier for me. Really great time working there. I loved it. It was amazing. And then my last job, which has been recently, I've been working under independent contract. So right now I'm working for a band called Melted Bodies, and I'm also looking at some other contracts for basically helping people to create their games. And that has been a really rewarding experience in its own way. I think one of the frustrations with that has just been, it's been a tough timeline, because I've had to do, with the contract work, it's been a lot of juggling. And so I've had to do, some work over here, some work over there, in between other projects. That's been really rough. And I would say, working for yourself, probably the timing is the hardest aspect, because, my best friend on any team is going to be my producer, because they're the one and I had a great producer on Fortnite and all these other teams. I had really good producers, because they're the one who's managing your time, they're managing your schedule. They're sort of like a personal assistant for everybody on the team, right? They're there to make sure everybody succeeds and to support you in almost whatever way you need, right? And Mark Cantor was a really good boss from Zynga. He was a really good producer who had a really good, I think, service-oriented way of approaching that role. He really stood out to me. I had a really good producer at Sony Santa Monica as well, Dustin. Man, that guy was great. He was a really good producer. Best producer I worked with was James from Manticore Games. Wow. I mean, the producers really stand out to you. I think in many of these positions, I remember my producer, and sometimes more than my boss, because I think the producer has a different way of looking at it, and they can have so much impact. And in a way, they kind of are your boss. In a way, the producer's kind of helping manage your tasks. So, in a sense, they're kind of like your boss too. But so that's been the tough thing about independent contract work is you got to be your own boss and you got to manage that. So that's another consideration. So this is my tier list. This is what it's been like. About 16 jobs. And now, I'm doing the contract stuff. I'm also searching for full time. So it's been a trip, but I think each one of these experiences has affected me in its own way. Some of them have been completely out of my comfort zone, trying out a task I've never done before, and that's been an amazing, rewarding experience. And other stuff was exactly in my element, but for one reason or another, it just didn't feel right, And I think I've had such a privilege to try out so many opportunities because I've really got to hone in on what matters to me on a job and what kind of teams I aspire to be with and what the values of those teams are that resonate with me, that enabled me to do, the best work I can. So here is every internship I've ever done, every job, contract, and some of my thoughts. So I'd love to hear what you think. Do you feel like, have you ever worked at one of these companies and felt like I got the vibe wrong? It was a different experience for you? That's totally understandable, right? Everybody's going to have a different take. Maybe it's very different being a full-time employee at one of these companies than an internship. I've certainly mentioned that at a few of these companies, I think that's definitely the case. And what was it like doing your internships? Or how have your internships compared against each other? Are there any axes with which you didn't think were very important to evaluate a job? But now that you've started to work in a job, you realize, wow, this aspect is really important to me. How do they treat an engineering decision versus a design decision? With what autonomy can I, engage in the work? Can I just jump into the code base and fix something? Is that hard to do? To what degree can I ask a writer to have lunch without getting in trouble? Is that a factor for you? How much do the players care about the game? Does the fan base really truly care about the game? Are they happy about the company? Are they happy to see what the company has to say about stuff? Or maybe is there a little resentment? Maybe they don't really like the company so much. What is the tangible impact of your work? Do you see your day-to-day influence impacting people? Like when I was working at Stanford and I could see these students, literally I could see their progress so demonstrably from day one to day, 90 or whatever it is, grow in leaps and bounds. And I think one of the most important things for me is how much are you growing? Is this an internship or a contract or a job that's really challenging you in the ways that you want to be challenged? Is it a job where you feel like you're growing in competencies that you want to consider, your best attributes? Or is it a job where you're dedicating a lot of time to maybe menial stuff, maybe stuff that you don't think is helping? Maybe you feel like you're grinding in a sense, not in a good way, but sort of just milling, like a sawmill, like just sort of having the river push you round and round. These are some of the things you might want to think about when you're thinking about your job. Some things that I've been thinking about recently. Yeah. All right, so that's it. Thanks. Leave a like if you liked it. And let me know if you have any questions. I'd be happy to chat with you.